Cooper Kupp is on the move. Does he have any dynasty value left? We'll debate on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. And it's a Wednesday show, so of course, Matt Williamson is here. Follow him on Twitter at Williamson NFL. We've got mailbag questions today. Let's get to the first one from Jake. He wants to know, is there anywhere that Cooper Kupp could go to where he would have dynasty value? Matt, what do you think?
We always talk about the Steelers, and trust me, the last 24 hours has been a lot of Cooper Kupp Steeler chat in my life. And if you go to Vegas, the lowest or the best odds of his next landing spot are Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Not dancing around the question, but I do think if you have this player, this could be an opportunity to get something back while you can. Usually people get, interest gets drummed up when players change teams. It's always an opportunity to dump your garbage. I'm not even saying he's garbage, but when someone moves teams, someone in your league usually says, ooh, that's exciting. And in the receiver world, it usually doesn't pan out, to be honest with you. Sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not. But I do think if he lands in a spot where he's the clear 2 on his NFL team, Pittsburgh in particular, or a Higgins-less Bengals, I think he's probably still a top 36 receiver on Sunday, check the box, fill out your lineup type guy. Not a top 36 dynasty receiver, but in terms of redraft and, putting guys in your lineup, I would say so.
Who's throwing him the ball in Pittsburgh?
Probably Russ. But Pickens might not be
Justin
back.
Fields.
That's true.
Are we officially on Russ over Justin Fields here is the question? Because I
think it's really 50-50, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I really do. But I would bet on Russ if I had to put a chip down. But I think Pickens is 50-50 to return.
All right, Kate, where do you land?
I think that this is a really good opportunity to probably move on, depending on where you're at in your your dynasty build. I don't want to forget that, through Cooper Kupp's first 6 games of the season, obviously he missed time with injury in that span, but over that first 6 games for Cooper Kupp, he was averaging 81 receiving yards per game, 0.7 touchdowns per game. Like, he was productive, and obviously that was a in part beneficial, having Puka Nacua injured. There were contributing factors to, I think, some of his success, but I also think that he was productive leading up to the end of the year. Now, your brain is probably looking at Cooper Kupp as though he's completely done for, absolutely kind of pointless, because he ended the year on such a massive skid. But it is kind of hard for me to ignore the fact that he might actually be somewhat useful, like Matt said, probably as a top 36 wide receiver on, a 1 to 2 year base. And it kind of makes me wonder, based on current costs, we're going to see, I think, some probably fluctuation in his value here. I'm eager to see February's Dynasty ADP ranks, but a top 36 wide receiver with, I think, some upside when their value is this low. It does feel like maybe there's, I don't know, is the value on your team greater than what you're going to get on the free agent market? Maybe it is right now with where Cooper Kupp's currently at.
So here's my thought, man. I would love to have your thoughts on this. I think I'm willing to sell him for 60 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar right now, because you look like the history of receivers in their 30s changing teams. Even look at the last couple of years. Like we saw DeAndre Hopkins get traded this year, had a couple good games, but not a lot. Amari Cooper goes to the Bills and did not a ton. Most of the time when these guys get into their 30s and they're switching teams, they just don't have a lot of success. And I just have a hard time believing that he's going to be in a better situation than with a coach that absolutely loves him in Sean McVay and a quarterback that absolutely loves him at Matt Stafford. So kind of regardless of where he gets traded, I think I'm willing to just dump him now, even without knowing where he could potentially land this offseason.
We talked about this on a show a couple of days ago. Here's a list of the wide receivers to score more than 200 fantasy points at age 32 plus. Cooper Kupp going to turn 32 this upcoming season over the summer. Larry Fitzgerald, Andre Johnson, Reggie Wayne, Steven Smith, Julian Edelman, and Anquan Bolden since 2010. That's only 6 players to have accomplished that feat. Now, a couple of them, Larry Fitz, Reggie Wayne, did accomplish it twice, but
and those guys are all Hall of Fame or borderline Hall of Fame guys.
It's not a super
right. Andre and Larry, and right.
So, do you think Cooper Kupp can do it? And if he can't, and let's be honest, like 200 fantasy points, that's a lot in half PPR formats. That's probably a fringe wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. I don't think that's probably in the cards for Cooper Kupp unless he gets the opportunity
be happy with 180.
to earn 10 targets per game.
I mean, if he scores 180 or 190, you would be thrilled.
Absolutely.
Of course. But it is a good point. So, like on our Steelers.com show that Marcus was nice enough to join us a week or so ago, by the way, Kate, we'll get you on at some point. We've been kind of equating it to like the Allen Robinson deal, which happens to involve the Steelers as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be similar compensation. Like it might be a 6th round pick, a 7th round pick. And that's why I bring this up because of your point, Marcus, that if he goes to the Steelers or Bengals or whoever for a 6th round pick, people that are interested in him now might be like, oh, the league thinks he stinks, and it's really just a contract dump. They're just going to be happy getting that doesn't mean he stinks. It's just a contract dump. So maybe his stock will drop when they see the compensation. I was going to bring up Hopkins. Like, would you rather have Kupp or Hopkins?
Hopkins.
I'll take
as a free agent too. Yeah.
Well, and Hopkins is pretty clearly playing through a knee injury right now.
Yeah,
but at least he plays. I think that's my concern with Cooper Kupp is we're just penciling him in to miss like 8 to 9 games every single season now. And it's going to be really hard to deal with that, especially if he goes somewhere where now he's playing outdoors or with a lesser quarterback. I just think there's a lot of unknowns here that have me a little spooked.
Like, would you trade him for Jalen Coker right now? I like Jalen Coker, by the way.
I do like Jalen Coker. I probably would hold on to Kupp at that price.
Okay. I'm just wondering what his value is.
Well, see, Marcus, you bring up the knee injury for DeAndre Hopkins. I also don't think, and again, this is just kind of par for the course for Cooper Kupp at this point, but I also want to point out that I don't think Cooper Kupp was fully healthy either this season. So I think both of these wide receivers dealing with injury throughout their 2024 campaigns at some point. I just don't, I think probably your point is just that Hopkins a lock to play more games.
Probably.
Does that really benefit you though? Because you don't know when to start Hopkins at that point. Because at least Cooper Kupp, more times than not, he was fairly serviceable last year, right?
I just get so frustrated looking at my IR and consistently seeing Cooper Kupp there. So that's probably what it is.
That's fair. But I mean, honestly, there are times where I think T. Higgins is a great example of this.
Sure.
He misses a ton of games. What percentage of games does he miss since entering the league? I think like
35%.
35%. But here's the thing, when he's available, when he is not out of the active lineup, you're probably going to start him, right? And I think that's probably the difference between a guy like, T. Higgins, who misses a lot of time, versus a guy who maybe is injured, plays through injury, but then that diminishes his value because he's not necessarily serviceable, even though he's technically available.
I think my concern is that the yards per reception, the yards per target, almost every efficiency metric for Kupp has dropped in each of the last 4 seasons, and he's just not staying on the field. So you combine those two things together, he's going to be 32 this year. I just think he's a declining asset, and I would rather get out now before the floor completely falls off. We've got some other
super quick. I have to throw one more thing. His style of play too backs up what you're saying, Marcus. Like he wham blocks defensive ends and things like that other receivers don't. I mean, he throws his body around over the years. What do we think about Whittington, though? I'm sure the Rams will draft one, but I might overspend on Whittington right now.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you trade Kupp right now for Whittington in your dynasty leagues?
No.
It's too much, right?
It's kind of like the Coker conversation.
Yeah. I think it's a little too
I think
risky.
It's a little rich, but it's only because I think like I don't even know if it's necessarily the difference in, what you're getting in terms of upside versus Whittington versus actual production, just because Cooper Kupp. Like I don't necessarily know that if I'm projecting a year out, if I made that trade right now, if I'm projecting a year out, I look back at that trade, I don't necessarily know that I think it would probably be a bad one. I just think that you could probably get more for Cooper Kupp right now.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I don't know. I think that's probably the lesson here is see what the market's like. And, sometimes it's the case, like, depending on who is in your league, depending on, if you have, ageist optimists or ageist pessimists in your league, like see what the offers are. Cause I have a feeling that the trade market for Cooper Kupp, once we get a destination, is probably going to be a little all over the place until, things settle down. So like, see what you can get for him, see what he costs, like just do some exploration.
All right, let's get to some more questions, including what should you do with Garrett Wilson moving forward? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Are you looking for tickets to your next big event? Maybe last-minute tickets to the big game next week? Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all of the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste your time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Gametime Picks for a while now. I absolutely love it. They make it so easy to find tickets for your favorite events. Plus, the seat view feature is an absolute game changer. Before you hit buy, you can see exactly what your seats are going to look like in the venue. It is so reassuring. And the best part, you're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal elsewhere, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are answering your mailbag questions, and this one comes from Stephanie. She wants to know, what do you three think of Garrett Wilson moving forward? Matt, he is currently being drafted as wide receiver 12 right now, 17th overall. So right in the middle of your second round of your startup drafts. Been some rumblings that he might be available for trade this offseason. Where are you at with Garrett Wilson?
This is a tough one. Well, not really. I'm in. I mean, because I love the player. I mean, like if I'm building a true NFL team, he's probably one of the top 10 receivers I want. I mean, I think he is a superstar that has produced even with bad quarterbacks when Rodgers was out, things of that nature. He's a stud. I just don't know what's going on with the Jets. I mean, is Rodgers going to be back? And then therefore is Adams going to be back? I'd lean towards no and no, but who knows? And if they, Adams' contract's a disaster. They know that was kind of you're going to have to cut him situation when they traded for him. Mm-hmm. Can they afford to lose both those guys as the Jets? I mean, I don't want Tyrod Taylor throwing to him, but all that being said, talent. I want Garrett Wilson. And even his former teammate at Ohio State, Chris Olave. I know the concussions are scary. I want those guys too. They're just really good at football.
Kate, what about you?
Yeah, I think at this point, it just comes down to, I think Garrett Wilson is a better football player that maybe the stats would indicate. I know we haven't seen that upside, but I also think that generally speaking, we haven't seen that upside because of circumstances that were far beyond Garrett Wilson's control, right? Like it's been a bit of a battle at quarterback. And, in that second half of this 2024 campaign, did fall off a bit. And obviously, I think everybody understands that was in big part due to the fact that Adams came in. We had a good turnaround here for Aaron Rodgers and his connection with, Devontae Adams. But generally speaking, if your floor and what we consider a pretty disappointing floor at that is 101 catches for 1,100 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns, I think that tells you what a good football player you're looking at. And heading into year 4, I do think that he seems kind of done. He seems done with this organization. He seems like he truly wants out of the situation. I think the Jets are probably in a circumstance where they need, to borrow a term from the Pittsburgh Steelers, volunteers, not hostages, as they go into this massive rebuild. I don't necessarily know that Garrett Wilson is going to be looking like a volunteer at this point. I think both sides would probably just benefit from him moving on. Now, the question becomes like, who is in the market for, a player like Garrett Wilson? Everybody should be.
Everybody, yeah.
So like that puts all the premier kind of trade destinations on the block, right? Like imagine if you pair him with a quarterback like Justin Herbert. We saw a lot of success from Quentin Johnston, though he's a very inconsistent boundary wide receiver. Like you put him along with Garrett Wilson, with Ladd McConkey playing the middle of the field, like that's probably going to be a floor of like 1,400 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns, I think, for a player like Garrett Wilson. I just think the upside on any team that's just marginally better than the Jets is so worth buying in at what is a decently high draft cost right now.
So here's my concern, Matt, because I agree with both of you guys. Like Garrett Wilson's an awesome player. I've got no doubts about the talent. It's just we've yet to see one of those big seasons yet where he really helps us win championships because I think this was his best year ever and it was 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns this year. If
7.
he 7 touchdowns. Sorry. If he continues to remain in New York with the Jets without a quarterback, at what point will dynasty managers start to feel like, okay, we know he's really talented, but he's not worth wide receiver 12 prices or 17th overall because we're going into year 4 and he's yet to have one of those big seasons. When does the upside just not start to matter anymore? And it's now the production. And now maybe you would be open to trading him for guys like Ladd McConkey, who's already had a more productive rookie season than any season Garrett Wilson's had.
It's probably a bigger conversation, and for whatever reason, my brain is drawing a blank, but we've seen a lot of receivers in history that just are in bad situations to no fault of their own, to quote Kate,
Yes.
that just they're out there doing their stuff. They're great. If they were on a different team, they would have 500 more yards a year. And I don't even think that's that much of an exaggeration.
Well, think about Larry Fitzgerald, who we mentioned in the first segment. How many years was Fitzgerald stuck with terrible quarterbacks?
Right. McLaurin most of his career.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these guys that are really good players that just can't produce because of their situation. Wilson might be the next. I mean, but if I go down on those kind of ships, I can live with it. Like if I misjudge a player's talent, shame on me. But if the situation is I got him right, but he's in a rough situation, I'm going to go down with that ship. That doesn't mean I wouldn't field offers if Tyrod Taylor's throwing, passes at his feet all year.
I mean it probably won't be Tyrod, but there's probably a chance that it's nothing inspiring, right? Either like it could be
Carr.
Yeah, Derek Carr, something like that, right? And that just doesn't get you all that excited.
I hear Sam Darnold's a free agent. I don't know if
any history with that organization.
Russell Wilson, maybe.
Maybe.
So that's the thing, is I guess it's, to me, if we get to April, May, June, and they have a quarterback situation like that, Matt, would you be willing to trade Wilson for somebody like Ladd McConkey, who we know isn't as talented, but is just in a much, much better situation?
Not yet. I don't think so. No. But I was going to ask you guys, would you rather have Wilson or today, not knowing landing spots, your choice of any incoming rookie receiver?
I'd take Wilson.
I would too.
Kate?
Yeah. Wilson.
Ted McMillan with the Patriots would be a lot of fun. That's the only one that gives me a little bit of pause. But yeah, I think I agree with you. Let's have a little debate about which Chiefs wide receiver do you want to own in your dynasty leagues. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game, where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick and you are cashing out. I like the more for Travis Kelce receiving yards. I just think he's going to get peppered with targets. Go check those out over on PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, we've got one more question here. This one's from Kate Majuk. She wants to know, Matt, which Chiefs wide receiver do you want moving forward in your dynasty leagues, Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy?
So I happened to see Kate's response on this one, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I am going the other direction. And I'm going to take Rice. And here's why. 2 reasons. I think he is a utter target hog. Make it 3 reasons. I don't think Kelce's going to be long for this world, and he does much more Kelce stuff in the middle of the field. And lastly, because he's a wide receiver, if Rice gets suspended, I understand the volatility and the downside. I mean, if he gets suspended, et cetera, there's always a receiver I can find. I mean, so be it. I lost a nice investment, but there's always receivers around that I can have, and my roster is always going to be loaded with them anyway. So I just think he's a 12 target a game guy.
Kate.
I don't disagree. I think from a volume standpoint, Rice, when both of them are healthy, both of them are on the field, I do think is definitely going to see that lion's share of the volume. And, you mentioned the Kelce role. I mean, Rashee Rice, there was a reason I think that he fits so naturally into this Chiefs offense. And I think it's because he plays a very similar style of football to Travis Kelce, obviously not with the same type of size and blocking abilities, but the way that he kind of has this connection with Patrick Mahomes where he innately knows how to find these soft spots in zone coverage and just kind of sit and wait and find Mahomes. Like, that is a distinct talent. And that is something that I think also comes with chemistry that you build over a period of time with a quarterback as creative in extending plays as Patrick Mahomes. Not something that just appears overnight and not something that every wide receiver can do successfully. I do think, however, that Xavier Worthy, for whatever, maybe extra targets he's going to be missing out on, I do think this is a player that is going to see generated touches, just like they're going to manufacture touches for him, whether it be on end arounds, whether it be on true carries, whether it be on short plays. He's going to get the down the field targets. I love the versatility in the way that they've used Xavier Worthy so far. I believe in the talent. I don't think he's just a speedster. I think he's got the finesse as well. Like, he doesn't just separate for me because he's faster than the other guys. I think he offers finesse in his ability as a route runner. And finally, I do think you have to consider the availability factor. Like, let's not forget that not only is there the looming suspension, not only have there been multiple issues of concern with Rashee Rice, which was a concern in the pre-draft process for him, the maturity issues, etc. That's extended into the NFL. There have been multiple incidents, even after the initial big car racing thing. Like even after that, there were a couple more incidents that maybe didn't turn into anything, but still some concerning red flags. And then there's that devastating knee injury. Like for me, there's a few reasons why I think Xavier Worthy, just the simpler answer, right? Like Occam's razor leads me to Xavier Worthy.
So I'm a big fan of both guys. I collect a lot of football cards of both of them. So I'm a big Xavier Worthy fan.
Yeah, brought props to the game. I like it.
Well, they're just sitting right here because they're displayed in my office. That's how much I love Xavier Worthy. I love both these guys. I was making the case last year that I thought Rashee Rice had a chance to be a top 10 dynasty receiver. And honestly, I think we were on the way to having that happen. The first 3 games, he was over 100 yards in each of those games. I think that Rice's position and the player is better suited for fantasy production. But I kind of agree with Kate. There's just more risk there. The knee injury, the knucklehead factor, which leads me to taking Xavier Worthy. But the truth is, Matt, I want both of them on my team. I just think I know this Chiefs offense wasn't good this year, but projecting forward with a healthy Rice and a, let's say, 23, 24-year-old Xavier Worthy, I wouldn't be surprised if this Chiefs offense gets back to being one of the best in the league. And we know that Patrick Mahomes can support multiple players. I want both. And I know that's a cop-out answer, but I truly want both of these guys on my roster.
Here's the thing,
though. Offend either one of us, but
well, I mean, I have no problem offending you guys. I just have a hard time picking between my 2 favorites.
I think that's a fair argument. Honestly, one of the biggest shockers for me, though, it comes with Rashee Rice's price tag right now. Right now, in the latest batch of Dynasty Startup ADP, wide receiver 16. Wide receiver 16. That's a hefty.
I think that'll go down
tag.
once. It'll go down once we hear about the suspension, right?
I think that's fair, but I also think again need to take this injury into consideration. This was a nasty knee injury that I think, again, kind of people just writing off a little bit. Like, I know we see miracle comebacks from, ACL injuries, but it was a complicated knee injury, right? So, like, you have 2 compounding factors that could completely wipe out his availability for the 2025 season. How do you value a player that you might not get to see hit the football field, till midway through the 2025 season? I think that's being somewhat optimistic. If not, you're looking at a guy who hasn't played football in a year, and then maybe you're hopefully counting on your top 16 dynasty wide receiver to save you in the fantasy playoffs. Do you trust him in that circumstance? Like, I'm looking at Rashee Rice as a guy that I'm not going to fully trust in my lineups or fully trust to support my roster until 2026. And in that case, I just don't see the upside in investing in him at such a high cost, right? Like, I want both of these guys on my roster. If I was able to get in on Rashee Rice when his ADP was somewhere around like wide receiver 30, not when he's being valued, I think, relatively close to his peak considering the circumstance.
Real quick, Marcus, to your point about loving them both, we could easily write the story of Kelsey doesn't come back.
Yeah.
There's no Juju or Hopkins nonsense going on anymore. These 2 are on the field every snap, give or take, and they're Mahomes clear 1 and 2 or 2 and 1 targets every week, and they could rack up some points.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it goes back to like what Andy Reid had with Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin, like some of that stuff, where it's just those are the 2 guys on the field at all time, and they're going to run their passing offense that way. I think it's going to happen. Maybe it's not 2025 because Kelsey comes back for 1 more year, but I do think eventually that's just going to be the offense. And honestly, Matt, I think they fit well together with Rice doing everything in the middle of the field and Worthy doing everything else. We'll see. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Matt on Twitter at Williamson NFL. Follow Kate at Kate Modjuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.